It's been more than 40 years since the Wilderness Committee was first organized around a kitchen table in Victoria, British Columbia. But some things haven't changed.
People want a more just society. That's what we stand for, a society that protects its environment.
The Wilderness Committee is keeping watch over this old-growth forest near Chilliwack Lake.
We're down to just 10 owls in the wild in Canada, all of which are found in southwestern British Columbia.
I'm standing in an old-growth forest, and now, like then, we're fighting to protect these ancient giants from chainsaws. Since 1980, we've stood up against some of the worst polluters and helped set aside some of the most cherished landscapes in this country.
Environmentalists who gathered to criticize Alberta's government for dragging its feet on climate change. By 2020, BC will be down to about 40 megatons. That means we'll cut out about 25 megatons from our emissions.
Working together with activists from Indigenous communities, leaders from across movements, and tens of thousands of people like you, we've kept water and air cleaner, communities safer, and forests like this one standing.
That's our ancient ways of being unified for these purposes. OCM, HISCA.
We still have a lot to do, because what's changed most in 40 years is the urgency. Old-growth forests and other threatened ecosystems were rare 40 years ago, and they are even scarcer now. Yet still, government at every level delays and continues to uphold the status quo. The twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss are existential threats that require massive systems change and a fundamental shift in everything we do. The misplaced idea that the continued pace of resource extraction and the accumulation of wealth
at the expense of everything we share this planet with has to change. Making room for animals and plants, big and small, must be prioritized above the profits of logging and mining. This is a priority that the Wilderness Committee has spent decades defending, out on the land and in courtrooms across the country. We continue to fiercely advocate for spotted owl, southern mantic caribou, and many others. While we had some wins, we know that we need to create and enforce laws and regulations that allow us to meet our needs without clear-cutting old-growth forests and destroying species at risk habitat. Respecting the limits of nature and setting ecosystems aside is necessary, and it is possible. From the banks of the Fraser River in Coast Salish territory
to the lakeshores in Algonquin territory, we've already logged the vast majority of old-growth forests and pushed development into wetlands and other sensitive ecosystems. Logging even continues in some provincial parks, such as here in Algonquin. Facing governments that log in protected areas and cut back legislation meant to safeguard species habitat, the Wilderness Committee fights for policies that reflect the fact that intact nature is now the most valuable thing we have. Together we will protect land, water, and wildlife. This work must be done in line with science and must also center and uplift the rights of Indigenous nations.
And justice for Indigenous people. Every tree, every river and mountain is in the territory of an Indigenous nation. Activism to protect biodiversity and combat climate change needs to challenge ongoing colonialism. The environmental crisis is connected to the dispossession of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Solutions have to include returning land and power to Indigenous nations.
And right now we're in the process with our allies to make what was wronged right. And that work is also going to be ongoing.
Our efforts to do this work in the right way brings us out to dozens of traditional territories in the wildest valleys, at the ruggedest coastlines, and everything in between. From pipelines to mines to clear-cut logging, it's important to get out of the ground to really understand the impacts. Whether it's a small urban forest or a vast wilderness area, we are your eyes and ears on the ground. We make maps, videos, images, and bring back stories so that you can share this knowledge with decision makers. It's your passion and motivation
that holds our government accountable. A trip out onto the land is all it takes to see what's really happening and understand how weak the regulations really are. On this site inside a provincial park, we can see the devastation from logging. We can see that the government is allowing things to happen what industry is getting away with, and how our regulations aren't protecting these wild areas. With this understanding, you and I can call out these weak laws and the politicians that make them to set aside more forests, more rivers and lakes, and more habitat for key species. Protecting nature is about the places we love, and it's also part of the fight against
climate change. Decades of burning fossil fuels, long after we've known the consequences, have backed humanity into a corner. Swift and dramatic emissions cuts are now required for our survival. Government targets are inadequate, and the plans to get there are even worse. Facing climate change means confronting the fossil fuel industry that's driving it. Building an economy based on healing the land and water and taking care of each other would provide better jobs than dead-end oil and gas projects. At the Wilderness Committee, you and I are working to stop fossil fuel projects and build solutions with communities and nations.
Because we know a different way is not only required, it's possible. Aligning our work to protect lands and waters with the fight for justice for all people is our challenge moving forward, and it's a challenge we're ready to rise to.
Together, we'll ensure future generations thrive here. Join us.